Volcanoes are impressive natural wonders that we should admire from afar. They remind us of the awesome power our planet possesses, even though they are beautiful to look at. It's best not to get too close, because these behemoths can literally blow your mind. On this channel, we have covered many volcanoes and what would happen if one erupted. But what if all volcanoes on the planet erupted simultaneously? What would happen to humanity in such a scenario? Would we be wiped out completely, or would we survive somehow? Let's find out. The first thing that would happen when every volcano on the planet erupts at once is that the sky will turn black. It sounds like a movie, but it could really happen. This is due to the massive amounts of smoke and ash that would be released into the atmosphere. If all volcanoes were to erupt at once, then we would witness one of the largest volcanic eruptions in history. And so much ash and smoke would be released into the atmosphere that it would darken the sky. The ash and smoke would block sunlight, turning the sky into an eerie shade of black. It might look like the end of the world, and in fact, it might actually be the end of the world. In a matter of minutes, cities would vanish under a blanket of ash. As the eruption continues, the ash and smoke would spread across the planet, covering entire cities in a thick layer of dust. Major cities that are home to millions of people would be completely buried under the ash. Even if you managed to survive the initial explosion of the volcano near you, you wouldn't for long, because the falling ash would bury everything in sight. People would desperately run for cover, but there would be no escape. No matter where you went, the ash would find you. And as the air grew thick with ash and smoke, it would become difficult to breathe. People would choke to death as their lungs struggled to get enough oxygen. As the ash continued to fall, it would eventually cover the entire planet, burying everything in sight under a thick layer of dust. Entire countries would be wiped out in the blink of an eye, and major cities would become unrecognizable. Imagine New York City, one of the busiest cities in the world, reduced to a pile of ashes. It would be a scene straight out of a horror movie. But this is just the beginning. While some people would die immediately from the initial explosion, or by suffocating under the ash, others would survive the disaster only to die later from injuries sustained during the chaos. Many people would suffer severe respiratory problems as a result of inhaling large amounts of ash and smoke. Their lungs would be filled with ash, making it difficult to breathe and leading to a slow and painful death. Others would be burned alive as molten lava rained down from the sky. When the volcanoes erupted, the hot, molten lava would rain down from the sky, incinerating everything in its path. Some would try to take cover under the ground, but the thick layer of ash would prevent them from doing so. Others might try to hide in their homes, but the sturdy buildings wouldn't be able to withstand the intense heat of the molten lava. Some might try to escape by running away, but they would be too late. The molten lava would be raining down from the sky at such a rate that it would be impossible to outrun it. The earth would be scorched and cracked by the intense heat of the molten lava, creating deep fissures that would stretch for miles. The ground would tremble as the molten lava flowed through the cracks, destroying everything in its path. Entire cities would be swallowed by the molten lava, turning into pools of burning metal. The few survivors who managed to escape the initial blast would now have to deal with the aftermath of the disaster. They would emerge from their shelters to a world that had been completely transformed. The sky would be filled with smoke and ash, blocking out the sun and casting the world into darkness. The air would be thick with ash, making it difficult to breathe, and the ground would be littered with the bodies of those who had perished in the disaster. The survivors would be faced with the daunting task of trying to rebuild society from scratch. They would have to contend with the aftermath of the disaster, such as the toxic ash covering the land, the lack of food and water, and the risk of disease outbreaks among the survivors. The world as they knew it would be over, and they would have to adapt to a new way of life. Volcanoes are powerful forces of nature that can cause massive destruction. While it's unlikely that all the volcanoes in the world would erupt at once, the consequences of such an event would be catastrophic. From the initial explosions and the subsequent ash and lava raining down from the sky to the long-term effects on the environment and human society, The aftermath of such a disaster would be truly devastating. So let's just hope that this scenario remains a hypothetical one, and that we never have to witness such a catastrophic event in real life. But what about tsunamis? You see, the eruption of a volcano under the ocean could trigger a devastating tsunami. And if it happens with all the underwater volcanoes at the same time, then we're doomed. Tsunamis are some of the most powerful and destructive natural phenomena on Earth, capable of causing widespread devastation and loss of life. If all the volcanoes in the world were to erupt underwater simultaneously, would trigger a series of massive tsunamis that would wreak havoc on coastal communities around the globe. The sheer force of the water displacement caused by the eruptions would generate waves that could reach hundreds of feet in height, easily dwarfing anything we have ever seen before. These monstrous waves would travel at incredible speeds, crashing into coastal cities and sweeping away everything in their path. Entire cities would be wiped out in an instant, leaving behind a trail of destruction and despair. The impact of such a cataclysmic event would be felt for years to come. It's causing widespread ecological damage and displacing millions of people. Survivors would be left to pick up the pieces and rebuild their lives in the aftermath of the disaster. It would be a true test of humanity's resilience and adaptability in the face of unimaginable catastrophe. So far, the largest tsunami ever recorded was the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, which was caused by a magnitude 9.1 earthquake that occurred off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia, on December 26, 2004. The tsunami generated by the earthquake was estimated to have been around 100 feet in height, and it affected 14 countries along the Indian Ocean coastline, including Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, and Malaysia. The tsunami resulted in the loss of over 227,000 lives and caused extensive damage to property and infrastructure. The wave had a profound impact on the local populations, who were not only dealing with the loss of loved ones, but also the destruction of their homes and livelihoods. In response to the disaster, international aid and relief efforts were mobilized to provide assistance to those affected by the tsunami. The tragedy led to the creation of the Tsunami and Indian Ocean Warning System to provide early warning of potential tsunami threats in the region. However, if all the underwater volcanoes were to erupt at the same time, then the tsunami generated would be much more powerful and destructive. It would be absolutely catastrophic. Calderas are also a serious threat. Imagine a massive hole opening up in the ground and swallowing everything in its path. That's exactly what happens when a caldera erupts. A caldera is basically a large volcanic crater that forms when a magma chamber gets emptied out during an eruption. When the magma chamber is emptied, the roof of the chamber collapses, forming a massive hole in the ground. Now, the size of these holes can vary widely. Some calderas are only a few hundred feet across, while others, such as the Yellowstone supervolcano in the United States, can be many miles wide. Calderas can form in two ways. The first way is through a simple collapse of the magma chamber. When the magma is drained from the chamber, the overlying rock has nothing to support it, and so it collapses. The second way is through a combination of collapse and erosion. As the magma chamber empties, the overlying rock collapses. However, erosion can also play a role in the formation of calderas. Over time, the walls of the caldera can be eroded away by wind, water, or ice, forming a larger and deeper hole. Now, when a caldera erupts, the resulting hole can be truly massive. For example, the Erupted caldera in Alaska formed after a massive eruption in 1912. The eruption was so powerful that it blew the top off the mountain, forming a caldera that is now 3 miles wide and over 2,000 feet deep. Let's consider what would happen if all the calderas on Earth erupted at once. First, the ground would shake violently as magma chambers get emptied out and caldera collapse. The ground would crack and split as the magma makes its way to the surface. Then, depending on the location of the calderas, massive amounts of ash and debris would be thrown into the air, blocking out the sun and plunging the world into darkness. Cities near the calderas would be completely destroyed by the initial explosions and the falling debris. The force of the explosions would level entire cities, reducing them to rubble. If you were standing next to a caldera when it erupted, you would be vaporized instantly. The intense heat and pressure would turn your body into a pile of ash and vapor. Even if you managed to survive the initial blast, you would have trouble breathing. The air would be filled with ash and debris, making it impossible to breathe. You would choke to death as you struggle to get some fresh air. Now, aside from the initial explosions and the falling debris, the eruptions would also cause massive earthquakes. The movement of the magma would trigger earthquakes that would shake the earth for days. The earthquakes would cause further damage to buildings and infrastructure, making an already bad situation worse. Additionally, the eruptions would cause massive changes to the environment. The ash and gases released into the atmosphere would cause global climate change, leading to extreme weather events. It would lead to global cooling, as sunlight would be blocked by the ash and smoke. Temperatures would plummet, leading to a prolonged winter season. This could have devastating consequences for agriculture and food production. Crops would fail, leading to widespread famine. Now, finally, the eruptions would also cause massive displacement of people. As cities got destroyed and the environment got polluted, people would be forced to flee their homes in search of a safer place to live. This would lead to a massive refugee crisis as people try to escape the devastation caused by the eruptions. Overall, the eruption of all calderas at once would be a truly apocalyptic event. It would cause widespread destruction, death, and displacement. Humanity would be pushed to the brink of extinction, and the world as we know it would cease to exist. Thanks for watching Parallelish. I'm Nova, your guide through the unknown. Want to explore more timelines? Tap the playlist above and keep diving into the what-ifs. Until next time, stay curious.